welcome back to At the Heart of a Conversation. Hi, my name is Shireen. If this is your first time here, excuse me. I had gotten over whatever sick bug bit me a few weeks ago, but I don't know, the past couple of days. My throat has been acting a little weird again, so excuse me for the coughing and the constantly clearing my throat. Um, but welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me. From the title of the video, it's called Missing My Sockie. Now, for those of you who may know me, um, Sockie, her name was Socks, but I called her Sockie all the time. Socks was my 16-year-old cat. My sister and I had Socks for 16 years. Actually, we had two cats, Socks and Chloe. Socks came a few months before Chloe. But prior to that, I had a cat, and his name was Alex. His name was Alejandro. Because I said if I ever had a son, I would name him Alejandro. Well, I didn't have a son, but I had a cat son. And so I had named him Alex. He was my very, very first cat that I had when I was 19 years old. And I had him for 17 and a half years. And Alex was my heart. And after experiencing, having to say goodbye to him, I didn't want to go through that again. And it was maybe only a few months later that my sister decided to get a little kitten, and that was Socks. And Socks, she was gray and white. She had white paws and white feet, and she was white down her belly, her chest. So my great niece actually named her Socks because she was telling her mom and my sister, oh, she looks like she has on white socks. So hence the name Socks. And I was at a time in my life where I was still grieving the loss of my cat Alex, and that pain was so unbearable. And again, I didn't want to go through that again, especially because I had to say goodbye to him. So I didn't want to have to go through that again. And so when, I don't know if I was either already home that day or I came home and then I see this little 4-month-old kitten and I'm like, what's that? And my sister was like, oh, that's Socks. And so she's going in your room and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't want a cat. I just, well, I had to say goodbye to Alex. I didn't want another cat. I didn't want a pet, nothing. And I love cats and I love dogs. And I'm like, but I was like, nope, that's it. I don't know. After losing Alex, I didn't want to experience that again. But my sister got Socks. And then she's like, well, like I said, she's going in your room. And I'm like, I don't want this cat. Right? And so I remember coming to my room. I guess it was that same day, and she brought Socks in here, and I hope this doesn't sound weird to anyone, and I'm sorry if it does, but I could clearly hear in my heart, I could hear my Alex say to me, Mommy, I know how much you love me, and that will never change. But you have room in your heart to love Socks. And I'm telling you, after I heard that, I just looked at Socks. My heart opened up and I fell in love with her. And then a few months later, there comes Chloe. And I'm like, huh? And again, my sister was like, just going in your room. And same thing happened. But since this video it's talking about me missing my Sockie. So hence I always have like nicknames, I'm sorry, for my pets. Like Alex, he was, my alley cat. Well, he was Alex actually, because like I said, his name was Alejandro. Socks, I always called her Sockie. And Chloe, most of the times I call her Chloe, but I'll call her Clolo, or or my little Chloe or something like that. But Socks, she was always my Sockie. Or I would call her Socks Cadoodle every now and then. But I didn't realize how much I needed Socks. And I didn't realize how much I needed Chloe as well. And for 16 years. So I'll just talk about Socks since this video is about her. The love, the peace, the comfort, the companionship, the joy, the fun times, the worrisome times, when you have to take them to the vet, or when you see they're not feeling well, that I've had with her. As hard as it was to say goodbye to her November 6, 2024, I wouldn't change having her in my life. And I have to thank my sister Kathy for that. As much as I resisted, and I really didn't want a pet. I definitely didn't want a cat. But it's amazing how God knows what we need. And sometimes when we're trying to push away things that we think will not benefit us because of maybe the pain that we had to endure with a similar situation, sometimes the Lord brings it into our lives, and we see that that's exactly what I needed, or that's exactly what you needed. And so Socks was the sweetest. She was like so scared of everything. I was like, my little scary Sockie, she was scared of everything. But at the same time, Socks had a strength and an endurance like I've never seen another cat, and especially a cat who was so timid. Let me don't say scared, was more timid. And she was very shy. It's like, I think Socks and I have the same personality. But for a cat that was so timid and so quiet and so shy, she had a strength that I literally saw. And we all saw, because for 14 of her 16 years, Socks was a healthy cat. The only time that there was a possibility that something might have been wrong was, I noticed she seemed like she wasn't feeling too well. I took her to the vet, and she actually ended up having, now I'm forgetting what it's called, pancreatitis. But gave her antibiotics, and she was fine after that. Socks never had any health issues, any health problems. She was always a healthy cat. And in the summer of 2022, especially those of you who are pet owners, I'm sorry, should have had a tissue. Pet owners, you know how your cat's behaviors are. You understand their makeup, and you know when something is wrong with them and they're not feeling well. And so I noticed that in the summer of 2022, Socks she wasn't feeling too good. She was a bit lethargic. She wasn't eating a lot. She wasn't drinking much, and she was laying down a lot. And of course, Chloe was here. She was right next to her with her. And so, I would tell my sister, I think Socks is not feeling well. I'm going to have to take her to the vet. And that's another thing. I have a basket case when it comes to my cats. And so every little thing, if I see something is off, because you know their character, you know how they act, and so when I see, oh my gosh, she didn't go to the litter box, or oh my gosh, she's not eating, or she's laying around too much. We know how our pets are because they can't speak to us and they can't tell us, Mommy, I don't feel well, Daddy, I don't feel well. You go by how you know their actions are. And so I told my sister, I'm gonna have to take Socks to the vet. And so I took her to the vet, and she come to find out she had a fever. And so they're gonna try to figure out, okay, what's causing the fever. So they have to do blood work and do some tests. And so they gave me medication for her and said, okay, give her this, take her home, and bring her back tomorrow. And if she still has a fever, we're going to have to admit her. And so took her home. They did a particular blood test. Her blood work came back fine, except there was one part where they still wasn't too certain of. And so I took her back the next day. Took her inside, took her temperature. Unfortunately, still had a fever. So she had to be admitted. Of course, I don't want to have to leave my cat, and especially because Socks, she's so timid. But I left her there. And I have to say, if you live in Staten Island, New York, or if you live in one of the 5 boroughs in New York, I highly recommend Bay Street Animal Hospital on 999 Bay Street in Staten Island, New York. They are one of, to me, the best vet hospital, which is also a vet clinic, if you want to say it together too, because that's every time they had to go see their veterinarian, they would go there. There's offices in there. It's just a hospital. They are the absolute best. Dr. Cavallaro, she is Chloe, and she was Socks's vet. I can't say enough about Dr. Cavallaro. Dr. Cavallaro, she's phenomenal. Dr. Cohen, when Dr. Cavallaro wasn't available, Dr. Cohen, I would bring them to see him. He's phenomenal. I have to say Dr. Annenson, she's also a very, very good vet. But Dr. Cavallaro, seeing as she is their veterinarian, she is phenomenal. And the many times I had to take Socks back, she was just always so patient with me. I mean, I'm not like a dramatic person where I go there and I'm like, oh, my cat. But you could tell that I'm probably crying or something like that. And I worry so much. But Dr. Cavallaro, she's the absolute best. But so took Socks back, and now she's admitted. And so now they're still running more tests. And a particular result came back, and it says unspecified. It's like they still couldn't figure out why Socks was having this fever, especially when all of her blood work came back fine. And I don't think they did any x-rays yet, but she wasn't exhibiting any symptoms of anything except for the fact that she had this fever, and they couldn't understand why she had this fever. And so they were finally able to bring the fever down. I visited her for the few days that she was there. And then finally it was time to bring her home. And so of course I was happy and excited. So I go to pick up Socks, and and so, they told me there was nothing. They couldn't figure out what was going on. Her fever is down. All her blood work is good, so on and so forth. So, of course, if she's still not feeling well, bring her back, blah, blah, blah. So I'll pick her up, put her in the carrier, and now I put her in the car, and I look over to her, and I notice that she's breathing heavily. Now, because Socks, she's afraid. She doesn't like being in the car. And, sometimes cats will pant like a dog. And that's what she was doing when I had initially bought her. But I looked at her and she was actually, her breathing was labored. But I was thinking it's because she's afraid. We're back in the carrier in the car going home. But I kept looking over her, every couple of seconds while I'm driving, make sure, I don't cause any accidents. And she's still breathing that way. I'm like, that's weird, but I'm still thinking it's because she's scared. I get home. Now, mind you, my sister's outside. And she was talking with a friend of hers. And I take Socks, excuse me, I take Socks upstairs and bring her upstairs. I open the carrier. She walks out of the carrier. She takes like 3-4 steps. And then she just lays on the floor and she's, so her breathing is labored. Oh my goodness. So, I am just bringing her back home from the hospital. And this is what is taking place. So, I call the vet's office and they were like, bring her back. Put her back in the carrier, go back down the stairs. My sister's like, where are you going? And I'm like, I have to take Socks back. She's breathing heavily. Drive back, take her. The vet comes out. Now this is Dr. Anninson. And she's like, sometimes what happens is that because they have so much fluid, from the IV that they give them. Sometimes, there's a lot of fluid, and so all they have to do is give her some Lasix, and the fluid will come out, she'll be fine. She says, okay, I'll call you back in an hour. Okay, call me back. I go back. She comes back out. She says, she's not better. It's worse. And I'm like, what do you mean it's worse? And I'm saying to myself, what are you talking about? She says, well, the fluid, there's more fluid there. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, what are you talking about? Why is there fluid anywhere around her heart or around her lungs or anything? There was nothing wrong with my cat, in that regards. And so they had to put her on oxygen, of course, because her breathing was labored. And so she had to stay in the hospital once again. And I'm like, I just literally left here an hour ago to take her home, and now she has to be in the hospital again. But anyway, so she's there. And of course, I'm driving home, and I'm crying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with Socks? And so during this time, I would call them, they would call me. And so while she's there, I think Dr. Cavallaro was scheduled to come in soon that day. So they were calling her to let her know. They were speaking with Dr. Cohen to let them all know what was going on with Socks. And so Dr. Cavallaro said, do an echocardiogram on her. And so the other vets are like, why would we do an echo? She doesn't have a heart condition. She's not showing any symptoms of having a heart condition. And she said, do an echocardiogram. So they did an echocardiogram. And when they finally got the results, they called, and Dr. Cavallaro informed us that Socks had cardiomyopathy. Of course, I'm like, oh, okay, what exactly is that? I know it's something with the heart, but well, come to find out that Socks, she had an enlarged heart. And I'm like, and both my sister and I are like, what are you talking about? There was nothing wrong with Socks. Socks never showed any symptoms of a cat with an enlarged heart. Never, ever. How in the world does she have an enlarged heart? I think sometimes they can't explain how that happens. And with cats, Cats can have a particular condition and they will show no symptoms for a long time. I don't even know how long Socks had an enlarged heart. And you know what? I didn't even think to ask. I don't even know. Maybe they would have known. Maybe they could have pinpointed when. But they're like, it's so difficult with cats because, again, cats sometimes they don't exude any symptoms of an illness that they may have until it gets to a point like it did with Socks, where it was fluid that built up around her heart and around her lungs. And I, I was just like, I don't understand this. So honestly, with Socks not starting to feel well and me taking her to the vet, that was all due to her having an enlarged heart. It's just, even while she was there at the vet hospital, she didn't show any symptoms of a cat having an enlarged heart. She was there because she had this fever that they couldn't figure out why. And it's not until I took her home that day, and I think part of it, I think my sister might be right, because Socks and Chloe, they have a carrier it's a really big carrier that they both could fit in there. But so I would use that carrier to take Socks. And when I was going to bring her home, they somehow misplaced the carrier. So they had to give me a smaller carrier. Socks was not a big cat. She's about 10 pounds. But they gave me a smaller carrier. And my sister was saying, it's probably maybe when I put her in that carrier, it's an unfamiliar carrier, is very confined. Who knows? Maybe that's what caused her to start with her labored breathing, which, if you really look at it, is a quote unquote good thing, because I was able to take her back to the vet and able to find out what was wrong with her, instead of taking her home and in the middle of the night something like this happens. But anyway, so I'm sorry. And so she was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, and many times when a cat or a dog, I'll just say a cat since Socks is, she was my cat. When cats are diagnosed with that condition, many cats don't live very long. Some may live a few weeks, some may live a few months. It's very rare, from what I've heard. It's very rare that, they'll live for a year, 2, 3, so on and so forth. But you do have some that do, but it's rare. And so, okay, so now we know what her condition is. And, we still had her on oxygen, trying to get her breathing to be normal. So she had to stay there again for a few days. And, when they were able to get her breathing under control, or she didn't need the oxygen, I was able to go and visit her and hold her, just spend some time with her, letting her know how much I love her, and we all miss her, and little sister Chloe misses her, we all miss her. And, she'd be coming home soon. And so, after visiting her one day and then going home, I honestly wasn't sure if Socks would make it. I really wasn't sure. And, Dr. Cavallaro would call us and update us, or I would call at night and the vet tech would let us know she's doing okay. She's not eating much, but of course that's because she's in an unfamiliar place. But when I would go visit her, they would bring food and water, and she would eat a little and she would drink, and which was good. And so, we get the updates about how she's doing. And I remember one day, again, this was one day where I wasn't sure if Socks was going to live. I really thought that this particular day, my sister and I would have to go to the vet and make a decision. And I was like, I'm not making the decision, you make the decision. I was like, I can't. I did that the first time with my cat Alex, and I'm like, I don't ever want to do that again because I just broke my heart in a billion pieces. But I remember Dr. Cavallaro did call earlier, and she was like, I'll give you a call to let you know, about socks and what's going on. And again, it seemed like I'm not sure if she's going to be discharged. I don't know. And if she is, how well is she going to be doing? And, well, we're going to have to go there and we're going to have to say goodbye. And I remember I came home from work and I got off the bus and then I was sitting in the car and I literally sat there and I just cried and poured my heart out to the Lord. And I just said, Lord, I know every living creature, we all have an end date. I know that I won't have Socks and Chloe forever, but I'm like, Lord, she's 14. And I know for a cat 14, she's a senior cat. But I'm like, Lord, Socks has been healthy all this time, and I can't lose her. She's part of my heart. And I just cried, and I cried my heart out. And I pleaded, and I begged the Lord to please let her be okay. I called my friend Millie before that, and I'm crying, and I'm like, please, could you pray with me? And she prayed, and I kid you not, maybe 2 minutes after I had prayed by myself sitting in the car, the vet's office called me. And of course, my heart was racing, and I answered, and they were like, hi, is this Socks' mom? And if anybody knows, I always call myself Titi Mommy for them. Because since my sister was the one who got Socks and Chloe, I'm like, she's the mom, I'm the Titi Mommy. She sees my sister, so I would be like Titi, like aunt. But because Socks and Chloe were always with me, I know they saw me more as mom. So that's why I called myself Titi Mommy. Excuse me, I'm sorry for the cut. I will wash my hands after. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But so the vet's office called me. I'm sorry, I'm like all over the place. I wish I could be polished like some of those people that come on to share, when they're talking about their pets and their pet passing and this and that. Some people are so polished, and look at me, I'm like all over the place. I'm sorry. But, and yes, this is called Missing Sockie, but I wanted to give the backstory as to why I'm missing her and what happened as to why I'm missing her. So they called and they were like, hi, is this Socks' mom? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, you can come pick her up. And I'm saying to myself, what? I can do what? You can come pick her up, and Dr. Cavallaro, she'll be here, and she'll go over all the medication, blah 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 blah. I was kind of like in shock. I was like, okay. So now my sister would be on her way home soon, and she, I think, was thinking the same thing. We're gonna go there, and we're gonna have to say goodbye to Socks. So I said, I'm not gonna call my sister. I'm gonna wait till she gets home, and then I will let her know. So then my sister comes home, and I look at her and I said, the vet's office called, and they said we can go pick up Socks. She's like, what? And so but anyway, and so I told her we can go pick her up, and she's like, listen, don't start crying, because she knows how I am when it comes to them. And so I was like, look, if I cry, I cry. I can't help that. This is how I am. Anyway, we get to the vet's office, and we're both so nervous. Well, yeah, I believe she was. I know I was nervous and scared because I didn't know how Socks would look and all that stuff because I hadn't seen her the day prior, so I wasn't sure. And so Dr. Cavallaro comes in first. And honestly, I wasn't expecting her to say all that she did. And I don't even know why, in my own mind, I wasn't expecting Socks to have to take medication. Don't ask me why, it just wasn't a thought in my head. But Dr. Cavallaro came in first, and she started to explain to us what her condition was. She showed us the echocardiogram results, and she showed us like which ventricle is it ventricle? Which hand from me? I think the left side was larger than the right side, but she went over everything with us. And then she started to list the medications she would have to take. Initially, she was taking 4 medications, but one of those medications was like to lower your blood pressure. But I noticed that one was making her just like lethargic. And so my sister was like, "Stop giving that to her." And you know what? It worked. Because I even asked Dr. Keller, I'm like, "Well, does she have hypertension?" She's like, "No," but anyway, after I stopped giving her that medicine, she started to get better um, when we were home. But I'm sorry, before we got home, um, we're at the vet's office, and Dr. Caballero was explaining everything and letting us know the medications that she has to take, how many times during the day she has to take it, which medications she has to take multiple times, which she would only have to take 1 time a day. Anyway, of course, I knew I'd be the one to have to give the medication. But she's explaining all of this, and she explained to us her condition, and you know, she of course cannot tell us how long Socks will live or how long she won't live. She can't tell us that. She's not God. And but she's like some animals. They do very well for a long period of time. Some, she goes, but some, this illness takes them quickly. Um, and now here it is. If my sister sees this, she'll probably. Well, now, mind you, I'm not a little kid. None of us are little kids. But um, yeah. So here it is. My sister was sitting and I was standing, and we're listening, and I wasn't crying. Amazingly, I was not crying. And she's explaining everything to us, and I'm like, okay. And so then she's like, okay, so I'll have one of the techs will bring Socks in, and then she was gonna come back in as well. And so the vet tech comes in, and she brings Socks in the carrier. And honestly, I could not believe how well Socks looked. And it just reminded me of the prayer that I had prayed just a few hours prior, and my friend Millie prayed. I'm like, Lord, even my pets, you're being so gracious and so merciful and so kind. And I even have a testimony about Chloe, but that'll be a video for another time. But I was amazed to see the way Socks looked. I thought Socks was going to look really horrible. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. But seeing her, I didn't expect her to look as well as she did. And so I have to say, the first month of her now being back home, that was a bit of a challenge, because giving her the medication, trying to give her the medication, and then omitting that one particular medication, because I noticed whenever she would take it all, and especially that particular one, she would just be lethargic. And I'm like, she's supposed to be getting better. She's getting worse. And so once I stopped giving her that one particular medicine, I noticed, or the socks were starting to perk up a little each day. And, you know, finally, maybe after a couple of months, took her back for a follow up. How's she doing? Like, she's coming along, and let her know the medication that I stopped giving her because, and she was like, that's fine. She doesn't need it. Which I guess they were giving it to her while she was there, but when she was home, it threw her for a loop. And I'm so grateful that I was able to at least stay home that entire week from work. And she had to take Lasix. They were giving her Lasix 3 times a day. Now, I was able to do that while I was home that week, but I called my vet's office and I'm like, I have to go to work. I can't give this to her 3 times a day. I could give it to her in the morning before I leave, because by the time I get home, it's already going to be like after 5 or something. And if I give it to her then, I can't give it to her at 10 o'clock at night. That's too short of a time period. So she said to me, she says, okay, you know what? She'll be okay if you give it to her 2 times a day. Just watch her. Watch her breathing. If you see that her breathing starting to become labored, then you increase it back to 3 times a day. Which, of course, in my head, I'm like, I don't know how am I going to do that if you have to space it out between like 8 to 12 hours, I think it is. Anyway, the week, of course, I'm a basket case because I'm like, she's still not 100%. I have to go back to work next week, and I'm like, but I have to say, God, in His mercy again, even with Socks being here, when I have to go to work, and I don't know how she's doing during the day, the Lord kept her. And each day, giving her medicine, which was a chore. Because I felt so horrible. I had to put it in a treat, then I had to pop it in her mouth, and she didn't, you know how cats are. With dogs, I think sometimes it's easier to hide it in cheese or hide it in this. I'm not saying dogs don't figure it out, but sometimes I think it's easier to get dogs medication than it is cats. And so for the first, you have to say the first year, it was challenging. I mean, and then I kind of changed it a bit because I noticed some of the medications, if I had to give clopidogrel, that's what I had to give her also. That's to prevent blood clots. You have to give her like a quarter of a tablet once a day, but even a quarter of that tablet was huge. And I'm like, I have to break all these things up and put them in smaller pieces of treats because I can't pop a big treat in her mouth and I don't want her to choke. And anyway, but I'll just say this, the first year, yes, an entire year, Socks got better and better. As in, she was basically back to herself. The only thing that I had to constantly take her back to the vet is because she constantly was getting UTIs. And I truly believe she was getting UTIs from all of the medication she had to take. Socks never had urinary tract infections. Never. Before Socks was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, she never had a UTI. Neither did Chloe, and Chloe still to this day, she doesn't have any UTIs. And so she started getting UTIs. It seemed like almost every month. And when your cat has a UTI, or because they would now urinate outside of the litter box. And so I would start to see that. And so it was almost like a regular thing, like every month or every other month. I had to take her to the vet. Vet costs are not cheap. But I do what I have to do, and my sister, we did what we had to do for our socks, and Chloe. But again, this is about socks, and so take her to the vet. um, Give me antibiotics, and what the great thing about it is that they have a particular antibiotic called Convenia. I love the name because I'm like, Convenia is convenient because it's an injection of an antibiotic that would last for 2 weeks, and it's specifically, I believe, for UTI. So instead of me having to give her more pills, they would give her that injection, and it would help. It would knock out the UTI. And then I noticed, even with that, her UTIs started to calm down a bit. Um, and I remember I had noticed that. I was like, wait a minute, it's been 3 months, 4 months. And I'm like, I haven't had to take socks to the vet. Like, thank you, Lord. But with all of that, too, I just noticed how socks was just thriving. And even in regards to her medication, and I'm not suggesting anyone do this, but even with her medication, because in the very, very beginning, for like the first 6 months or so, I was diligent. I made sure that I gave her medications on time, and I gave her the amount of medications that she needed. She had to take Lasix twice a day. She had to take clopidogrel 1 time a day. And then she had to take, I cannot for the life of me, why I can't remember what the other medication. It was a blue gel tablet. Pemobendin. There we go. Pemobendin. She had to take that. And she had to take that twice a day. She had to take that twice a day. No. Once a day. Wait, she had to take the Lasix, definitely. That's the water pill. She had to take that twice a day. It went from 3 times to 2 times. The Pemobendin, she had to take she had to take half a tablet. I'm sorry, she had to take half of a tablet twice a day. And the Lasix, she had to take, she also had to take half a tablet. She had to take half a tablet twice a day of that. The Pemobendin, half a tablet twice a day. And the clopidogrel, a quarter of a tablet once a day. But after about 6 months or so, I said, well, let me see how she would do it. Well, my sister, let's see how she'd do if I don't give her her at night. Like, I would give her a break. This is what I would do. I would give her a break maybe once a month. And I'm not saying to do this, and please don't come at me. I would not give her just to give her body a break from all this medication. And listen, I'm not a big medication fan. Even for myself, I don't take medicine. Even when I get sick, I don't like to take medicine. But that's just me. But for my pet, yeah, I know I had to give socks that, and I gave it to her diligently, and I gave it to her every day for like the first 6 months. But I noticed that, like, say, like if I forgot or if I accidentally missed it because maybe I wasn't home or something, I would just notice how she would look, how she would sound, how she would feel. And I'm like, okay. So I would just try it like, okay, I'm only going to give her the Lasix 1 time today, and I'm going to give her, everything 1 time today, and I'm not going to give her anything in the evening. And I noticed for a good 6 months, Socks was bouncing all over the place. She was going down the stairs, playing with Chloe. She was her regular self. Now she was starting to have a better appetite and everything. And even when I had to take her back to the vet, they would check and listen to her heart to make sure that there was no fluid. And every time I took her back to the vet, a few times, Dr. Cavallaro wasn't there, so Dr. Cohen, I don't know if you heard that. There's my Chloe downstairs. Dr. Cohen would see her, and he would listen to her heart, And he would always tell me, I would never know she's as sick as she is by looking at her. She goes, and he even said to me, which just so blessed my heart, he goes, I have never met someone like you. He says, you have been consistent in taking care of your cat, giving her her medicine, and even that you're telling me that, you might skip sometimes and all of that. It's like, first of all, there's no fluid. They don't hear any fluid around her heart or around her lungs. Socks was doing good because her heart was enlarged. The rhythm of her heart and the beating of it was faster and it was a different rhythm, but she was fine. She was fine. And Socks was doing well. And she made it to 15, right? She turned 15 and she was still doing well. And then I remember I took her to the vet, so she can get a checkup and everything. Oh, also to get an echocardiogram because she was supposed to get. Wait, no, I'm sorry. What happened was she kind of she seemed like she wasn't. No, I'm sorry. It's because there's so many things in my head. One day, I noticed, Socks went downstairs. She came down the stairs, I'm sorry, because I was already down there. Chloe was there. And, she walked over. She liked to lay in the sun, both of them. I think all cats like to lay in the sun because it's nice and warm. But I noticed, I saw Socks. She went to, just to walk over by the window, and she just went to just lay by the window, by the sun, in the sun. And Chloe was over there with her. So I just looked over. And I'm looking at Socks, and I'm looking at how she's breathing. Excuse me. To me, she looked like she was breathing too hard. Like I could see, like on her side, not from her mouth. She didn't have labored breathing, but it's just to me, her breathing just seemed too hard because I could see it more. Sometimes when I'm looking at Chloe, I have to like stare at her for a couple of seconds. I'm like, she's breathing, right? So Socks, I just saw her breathing going up, and I'm like, she didn't look that way yesterday or the days before. Although she's been eating, she's been drinking, going up and down the stairs, this and that and the other, playing with Chloe. But I said, that just didn't look right to me. So I said, you know what? Let me call. Just take her to the vet. I told my sister, she's like, she's fine. I was like, nah. Her breathing just looks too hard to me. Anyway, I take her to the vet. And so they wanted to do an x-ray so they can see, if there's any fluid or anything like that. And so I took her and Dr. Cavallaro did an x-ray, and she did have some fluid. And so she's like, okay, Chloe. She said, well, it's a good thing that you brought her in. She goes, how was she breathing from her mouth? And I said, no. And she says, was her nose, because it's like her nose was like flaring up a little more as she was breathing. She says, was she breathing from her nose like that? I said, yeah. She goes, well, it's a good thing you brought her in. Okay, Mama. Because she did have some fluid around her heart. And so they had to give her a big dosage of Lasix, and of course that would make you urinate. That's actually a medication that humans they take. That I forgot what the other name of it is, but that's a human medication that you take. Like if you have to urinate so that you don't get fluid buildup in your heart or your lungs. And so they had to give her a big dose so that she would urinate and, keep going to the litter box and get the fluid out. And so she had that. And so Dr. Cavallaro wanted to keep her. which I was okay with that day. I was like, that's fine. I had a feeling she was gonna have to stay, which I was happy about that. And they also scheduled for an echocardiogram. And so, anyway, had the echocardiogram. Then the next day, because I was gonna pick her up, she was only gonna stay one night. And so, and Dr. Cavallaro knows how I am too, because I'm always crying. But when I got there the next day, she had the results of the echo, and she walks in, and the minute she walks in, she was like, "Okay, now don't cry." I'm like, "You see, I was fine before you said all that." But anyway, come to find out, Socks actually had clots. Now she had clots on her heart, and her condition had progressed. And of course, I started crying because then I started to blame myself, because I was like, I hadn't been giving her the medication the way that I was giving it to her in the beginning. And she said it's not because of that. Because the other times that you brought her and you still weren't giving her the medication like twice a day, every day. It's like I would get, like I said, I would give her a break like once a week, like for like half of the day. Not like, it's not like I wouldn't give her the medication the whole week. It's like we get to Saturday, it's like, okay, no medicine today, just for that day, or just for that evening. But she told me, she says, it's not your fault. It's, you didn't do anything or not do anything. Because even before, when you weren't giving her the medication like that, she was fine. She said it's because of her heart condition. And, of course, in the back of your head, you know that if you have this particular condition, it is going to progress. It's not going to get better unless God does a miracle. And I know He can, because like I mentioned, He did a miracle for Chloe. But again, that's a video for another time. Because, oh my goodness, this is almost an hour. I guess even if anybody listens to this. And like I said, this is supposed to be about me missing Socks, and I'm telling you the whole story about. But anyway, I'll try to finish this, because I do miss her. It's been 3 months, and I miss her so much. Not a day goes by I don't miss Socks, and it's not just me. I know Chloe misses her big sister very much. I feel very discombobulated. And yeah, some people would say, oh, she's just a cat to you. She would just be a cat. Socks was my heart. She was part of a family. She was God's creation that He entrusted to us. Just like Chloe, He's entrusted to us. And you can't get a love, I'm sorry, in my opinion, you can't get a love the way an animal can love you. And then, listen, I don't care. I don't care if anybody says anything. I'm not saying humans don't love each other and all that. I'm just talking about the depth of love that a pet has for their owner. It's something you can't experience with a human. And again, I don't even know how to explain it. It's because to them, we are their whole world. So all of that love they give to us, it's unconditional. And that's how we are as humans. We're supposed to love each other unconditionally, but unfortunately, sometimes we do put conditions on how we love each other. But with pets, they don't give you attitude. They don't, well, yes, they do, but in a good way. But no matter what goes on, they love you forever. And all they want is to be in your presence. And so, for me, I'm just saying for me, that's why sometimes it's more pain losing a pet than a human. And I'm not saying losing a human doesn't hurt. Are you kidding? When my mom passed, I wanted to die. Okay. when my stepfather passed, when my Louis, my fiance, when he died, I didn't want to be here either. So I'm not saying losing a human is not difficult, because it certainly is. It's just, it's different. That's all I can say. It's different when it comes to a pet, because their love is just, it is a different, there's a different type of love. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm sorry. So yeah, so now her condition progressed, but yet Socks, she was still, like I said, she was still jumping all over the place as much as she could, because she had arthritis. She's 15 years old, and at 15, she's 70, 76 in human years. And that was another issue we had with her arthritis a bit, but I'm not going to get into that. But, and of course, and I was like, whoa, what does that mean? you know, but she's like, you just keep loving her, keep taking care of her. Um, you just give her whatever she wants, whatever she wants to eat, give it to her, so on and so forth. And so, of course, in the back of my head, I'm like, geez, this sounds like I'm not gonna have her, for much longer. But I think that was actually, yeah, that was that when she was, yeah, she was 15, yes, because I remember Dr. Cavallaro even saying to me, we got to get her to 16. And I'm like, yeah, we got to get her to 16. Or it might have been in the early part of last year. Like I said, I think that's so many things in my big head. but, um, but yet, even after that, Socks continued to be Sockie. My Sockie was just herself. And again, her UTIs would start to come back a little bit, and her arthritis would act up where I got scared a few times because of, certain things happened to her in a quick moment, and she would cry out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? But come to find out, it's because from the pain of the arthritis, and then I was starting a treatment, Solencia. It's a treatment that they inject that's supposed to help your cats or your dogs that have arthritis, that will really, help their joints. And a lot of cats I had seen, they were like the same age as her. They were senior cats, and after getting the treatment on a monthly basis, it was like they were like kittens again. Um, I mean, she had just started the treatment, so she only had like 2 treatments so far. And I would see a little bit of an improvement with her walking. She wouldn't be limping. Like, she didn't limp throughout the day, but like if she got up, she would limp a little bit, like me. Limp a little bit, and then after a few moments, then she, get her gait properly. But and so yeah, and so Socks was still doing well, then started giving her the medication, like, okay, I'm not gonna skip a day or anything like that. But then now we had to add a quarter of a tablet of aspirin twice a week. So now Socks had to continue with her 3 medications, plus I had to give her aspirin. And the good thing that had started to happen was she started eating wet food now. Socks was neither one of them were big wet food eaters. But it's like the last time Socks was in the hospital, she started to like to eat wet food. And I was like, you know what? Let me try something, because I was tired of putting the medication in the treats and popping it in her mouth, because I always felt like I had to go grab her, and she was always looking to run away from me because she knew what I was going to do, and that would upset me, and I feel like I'm stressing her out, and I don't want to stress her heart out anymore. I said, you know what? Let me crush the medications that I can, except for the Pimobendin, that was the gel tablet. I had to just kind of cut it up as much as I could. So let me put it in the food. And now clopidogrel is very bitter, very bitter tasting. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, I hope this is gonna work. I hope I could cover it up enough and pour enough of the gravy from the food. I did it, and it worked. And I was like, Lord, I don't have to shove this, pop it in her mouth anymore. I was like, oh my gosh. So, of course, I had to be near her so that she would eat it and make sure Chloe wouldn't eat her food, which she did one time. And I was like, Chloe, your medicine in there. Thank God, Chloe was fine. But anyway, so now no more stress of giving her medication. So anyway, I'm making this super, super long. Socks was born on August 31st, 2008. And so August 31st of 2024, I got to celebrate Socks' sweet 16. My little Sockie turned 16 August 31st, 2024. And this was a little over 2 years since she was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy. And I think it was about 5 or 6 months after she had her second echocardiogram. And even Dr. Cavallaro said to me, you are doing the best for her. She says, there have been a couple of times that I didn't know if she was going to make it. She said, but then yet Socks would turn around and you were taking her home. She said even the tech or the doctor, who did the echocardiogram for the second time, he didn't think she was going to make it. And it was over 6 months since she had the echo. And so she was like, you are doing the absolute best for her. Oh, and I forgot to mention, no, never mind. Never mind. Because I've already made this too long. But, so Socks made it to 16. And we were able to celebrate. And, I don't know, there was just a sense in my heart that I wasn't going to have her in 2025. Although she was doing okay. And then I didn't want to go anywhere. Like, on the weekends, I'm staying home. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying with my cats. And that's kind of how I am anyway. I mean, even when they were both healthy, I was traveling a lot at one point, and I missed them so much. But anyway, especially when Socks was diagnosed, I didn't go anywhere except maybe once in a while on the weekends. I would go visit my sister and my brother-in-law, my other sister. But that's just in Pennsylvania. But even then, I'm always like, oh, my Sockie and my Chloe, they okay, call my sister. She's like, they're fine. But I just had this feeling in my heart that I said, Lord, thank you that you allowed her to make it to 16. And there had been days that I was praying because I still wasn't sure. Like, the last few 6 months, I was like, I wasn't sure if she was going to make it. And I would just literally sit on my bed and she was laying on my chest. And I'm just holding her and I'm crying and I'm praying. And I'm like, Lord, I just ask you, please don't let me have to make that decision. I said, could you please just take her in her sleep when she's ready to go? Please. And there were some days I'm like looking at her and I'm like, is she still breathing? And thank God she was. But then she would just start to perk back up. And the reason why I believe I had this sense is because a couple of months after her birthday, I started to hear her coughing. That's never a good sign because that means there's fluid. She wasn't, she never coughed for the 2 years after her diagnosis. She never had a cough. But this was, what was this? This was August, September, October. Okay, so yeah, in like the ending of October, she, I remember I heard her in the middle of the night. I was like, oh, I was like, oh no. And then I noticed it again a few nights after. And I was like, well, Lord, I don't know if she did it during the day when I wasn't home, but I'm like, Lord, thank you that I was always home when I heard it. And so I said, after like the third time, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to take her to the vet because she's coughing. Although she didn't have any labored breathing, she was eating. Yeah, she was eating a lot, which was great. Because Socks wasn't a big eater, but she was eating. She was going to the litter box. She was still going downstairs every now and then. She didn't go downstairs a lot, but she would go every now and then. And she would always call for me to come up here anyway. So she'd stand by the door. No! I'm like, I'm coming. Just like Chloe was just calling me. And I'm like, I'm coming. Whichever one I call, they call, I come running. And so, um, but she was fine. Although she had that little cough, I remember seeing her come bouncing down the stairs like a little bunny. And she would hang out for a little bit, walk around. I give them both some treats, and she might eat it, she might not. Sometimes she wanted, sometimes she didn't. Chloe always wants it, but Socks and not so much. And she'd go lay on top of the couch. And she'd hang out there for a while, which I was grateful because Socks really liked to stay here in my room, which I'm in now. Chloe liked to stay downstairs with me. Although I hate, like when I would work from home, because I could work 2 days from home, I'd have to sit downstairs, but I would come up and check on Socks, like, Mom, are you okay? And, and then sometimes she would just stay downstairs, which I was grateful for, because then both my cats were down there with me. Anyway, and so with the cough, I made the appointment, and I was going, it was like a couple of days, because I wanted her to see Dr. Cavallaro, of course. And, but if she had labored breathing, I would have, of course, taken her in so she could see another one of the doctors. And so, so finally the day comes, and she's examining her and everything. And so she's, no, I'm sorry. No. She takes her in. Oh, I go in with her. And, the vet tech is there asking the questions. And so he goes in the back and he lets Dr. Cavallaro know. Then he comes in and he's like, Dr. Cavallaro wants to do an x-ray, of course, which I knew because they want to make sure, check, see if she has fluid. And so I took her to the back. And I noticed it was taking a little longer than usual. So I was like, I don't think that's good. And I'm like, I'm sure she had fluid because she's been coughing. And so I'm like, because you could hear when she coughed, it almost sounds like she's wheezing. So I'm like, I knew she had fluid. I just didn't know how much. And especially because she was eating, drinking, moving around, everything. She wasn't lethargic. So I didn't think it was a lot. Anyway, my cat, like I said, Socks, she's not, again, I'm sorry for constantly licking my hands. Socks was not a large cat. She was she wasn't very fluffy, but She just kind of had the appearance of being a little fluffy, but she was only 10 pounds. But then, she kind of dropped down to 9 pounds, and she stayed there. She stayed between 8 and 9 pounds, which was okay. Sometimes she would gain a couple of ounces. She never would lose, which was a good thing. But so that's Cavallaro finally comes in, and she comes in with this plastic container. And the fluid in the container was like kind of pink. Now again, like I said, Sock is not a very big cat, but even if she was, it doesn't matter about the size of the cat. I'm talking about because of the way Socks would function at home. The amount of fluid that was in that container, I wouldn't think Socks would still be able to function and even breathe normally. The container was about that high. The fluid was about this much. Now, I wasn't crying. And again, here she comes. She was like, "No, don't cry." And I'm like, "I wasn't crying until you said it." So the minute she walks in with it, I already knew that's how much fluid she had to extract from Socks. All of that fluid was around her lungs, and there was a little around her heart because she showed me, excuse me, her x-rays before and after removal of the fluid. Now, they can't remove the fluid from the heart because that's around the heart, and you're not going to, try to insert a needle anywhere near there. But she removed just about all of the fluid that was around her lungs. Uh, so, yeah, so she had, I forget how many milliliters, but it was just a whole lot of fluid that I'm shocked that for the amount of fluid that was around her lungs, that Socks was still even alive. Let me put it that way. Before I took her, that Socks still was breathing fine. I didn't see her. Her nose wasn't flaring. Her breathing wasn't too hard. She didn't have labored breathing, but yet she had all of that fluid around her lungs. And again, I just keep saying, Lord, it's your mercy. It's your grace that you're the one that kept Socks. And yes, as one of the vet techs said, I have to give Socks credit for being a fighter, because she was. Socks was a fighter. And anyway, so she told me, this was all the fluid that they removed, and just to watch her. She didn't have to stay, thank God. But just to continue to watch her, the normal schmeal that they tell you. And so I brought Socks home, and it was a little traumatic for Socks because she's scared already, and then having to have a needle put into you to extract the fluid. She said, although she was a little nervous, she says, I can see the difference that once I started to extract the fluid, I can even see how Socks calmed down. This is what Dr. Cavallaro was telling me, how she calmed down even more, as to say, oh my goodness, thank you. Because now I could breathe better, although again, you couldn't tell that she was having any issues breathing. I just knew something was wrong because of the cough that she kept having. And so I brought her home, and I'm like, well, before I brought her, I'm like, well, is the fluid going to build back up again? Because I think that's like, because Socks was already in the end stage of her disease when she had the second echo, 6 months prior. Yet she was still doing pretty well. But I just had this feeling this was going to happen again. because again, she never coughed for over 2 years, and now she's developing this cough. And I know when fluid starts to build up like that, it can happen again. Because actually, my mom had an enlarged heart, and she had bouts where she had issues where she couldn't breathe, and she'd have to ask my stepfather at the time, her hubby, when she remarried and moved to Bermuda, to take her to the emergency room because she couldn't breathe because fluid would build up around her lung. And so my mom had the same issue. And my mom passed away from congestive heart failure. And of course, Socks would go into the same issue, congestive heart failure. So I brought her home. You know, she was shaved a little bit on the side here. And I remember that day I brought her home. It was different than all the other times. I brought her home. She did eat. And then I brought her up here, and then I went downstairs to get something, and I came back up, and I didn't know where she was. And then I looked in the other room, and I saw her laying down there. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. And then when I looked, I see that she threw up. Socks really never threw up much. Like, Chloe would be the one who would throw up more, like if she ate too fast or if she had a hairball. She would be the one who would throw up more. Socks, normally, I don't think I've ever seen that Socks threw up. If she did, it might have been once or twice for the 16 years that I've had her. But she threw up what she had just finished eating. And I didn't like the way her eyes looked. And I was like, okay, just relax. Take it easy because I'm having a fit. And so, I clean everything up, and then she gets up and she comes back in my room. And I had a little heated bed for her because that helps with her arthritis, and she loved her little bed. I would plug it in, and she just lay in her bed. I mean, a lot of times she would come on the bed with me, and she would always like to lay on my chest. She would lay right here. She would look up at me. She would always reach her paw. Just put her little paw on my face. And I would just look down at her, give her lots of kisses, just all the time. I love her so much. But, so she comes back in the room, and she would either go in the corner over there on my bed, and she would lay there for that night. And so what I would do, like whenever Socks had to go to the vet hospital, and if she had to stay for a few days and come home, it would take her a while to get back to herself, like a few days or so. It might take her a week or so that she's feeling like herself. So I would just sleep on the floor next to her. Put my comforter down there, have my blanket, my pillows, and I would just lay on the floor with her, hold her paw, pet her, and just be near her. And so I just noticed after that, although she was still eating, she kind of didn't want to come on the bed anymore. I would have to pick her up, or she would jump up there and she would stay up there for a couple of minutes, and then she would jump back down and maybe go in the corner or go under the chair that I'm sitting at, although I would have the chair over there. And then she would come back and lay on her bed. Okay, I said, let me don't. Anyway, I would just lay on the floor. And so I remember a few days after that, I just kind of noticed that, to me, she seemed to not look too good in her eyes. And I just kind of felt like, I was like, she should be feeling better since there's no fluid. I'm like, her breathing was fine and everything. I'm like, but she seemed as if she was declining now. And to me, that didn't make any sense because I'm like, the fluid was extracted. She should be feeling better, not worse. And so I remember one day, I was giving her breakfast and her medicine, and I, sat on the floor, and gave, had the bowl in front of her, and she'd eat a little. And now it seemed like she didn't really want it, but I had to stay around. And okay, she didn't want it. To give her a few minutes. I'd come back. Okay, Mama, eat some more. Finish taking your medicine, and she would eat the rest of what's in there. And then I noticed that she hadn't pooped. And I'm like, oh no, she didn't poop today. And which is never a good thing when your cats don't poop and stuff. They don't move their bowels for more than a day. And just noticing how she still will go back over in the corner or stay under the chair. Like she was hiding. And then I would look at her eyes and I would start to see like she looked kind of dazed. And I would call her. And she would kind of look at me like, almost like if I wasn't there. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. Because again, I'm like, Socks, you're supposed to be feeling better. But you're getting worse for some strange reason. And so then the next day, I had to go to work. And she didn't want to eat. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. She didn't want to eat at all. And then she went back under the chair. And she didn't want to come over. And her eyes, she looked like she wasn't there. And of course I didn't want to go to work. But I had to go. And I'm like, Lord, please just keep her. Of course they always had dry food and their water bowl. I had a water bowl and dry food in my room. Because Socks stayed in my room most of the time, and I still had dry food and water downstairs for Chloe. Although Chloe would come up and she would still drink. Because of course she could have it, but she would come up here and drink from the water bowl here and eat from the food bowl up here. But this particular day, Socks didn't want to eat. And even if she didn't eat the dry food, the wet food, she would always eat. She loved the dry food. She especially would eat it like, I'd hear this crunching at like 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like she seemed to have like, she'd be so hungry like at midnight or something like that, which was fine. Because like I said, Socks didn't have a big appetite, but whenever she was hungry, she would eat. Chloe's but anyway, so she didn't eat, and so and she still hadn't pooped, so that was worrying me more because this was the second day. And I'm like, okay, if she doesn't poop, I'm gonna have to call the vet again, blah 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 blah. But I was like, but she didn't eat, which meant she didn't take her medicine. But I wasn't so worried about the medicine at that moment. I was like more worried because she didn't eat. And I went to work, and my sister was actually coming back from a mission trip that she had taken, and she was coming back that night. And so I came home, and I had asked my niece, because I don't have a car, and I know I had mentioned a couple of times with me being in a car. That was my other sister had let me borrow her car for a little bit, which is so great. My sister and my anyway. I don't have a car, so I had asked my niece. I said, I think I'm gonna have to take Socks to the vet. I was like, do you think maybe if you would look to take me, blah 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 blah. And she was like, yeah, Charlene, when she got home from work, because we all work in the same place. And so I came home, and when I came upstairs, because that's the first thing I do. I mean, Chloe's always downstairs, like, hi, mama. And then I kind of rush upstairs to check on Socks. And I come upstairs, and I don't see Socks in her bed. Normally, she would be laying in her bed, or she'd be laying in my bed on top of the pillows. Um, and I didn't see her. And so I looked, and she was lying under the bed. Under the chair. But when I looked in the litter box, I did see that she pooped, because I know what Socks' poops look like and what Chloe's poop looks like. So I was like, okay, thank God she got up and she went into the litter box. But when I looked at the bowl of dry food, I noticed the bowl was still full, which means Socks didn't eat anything. She didn't eat anything in the morning, and she didn't eat anything throughout the day. And so that was a concern for me. And I was calling her. I got on the floor and I was looking, and I was like, Mama, come on. She didn't want to move. I would touch her foot and she would pull away. And then I put my hand out because I have carpet in my room. And, after I pet her, I'm like, why are you wet? And then I noticed on the carpet right underneath her, it was wet. Which meant she urinated right there. Now, Socks wouldn't normally do that. Even with the UTI, she would urinate outside the litter box. Or she might urinate on the carpet, but she would stand and urinate right there on the front or something. Apart from going to the litter box to poop, she just urinated under the chair. And when she finally came out from under the chair, the look in her eyes, my Sockie was gone. Now, mind you, she got up to drink a little bit of water. She could still walk, but she wasn't there. And that was November 6th. And I went to pick up my sister from church because they were coming back, and I was telling her what happened. So now instead of my niece taking me, my sister would take me. And while my sister was driving us to the vet's office, Socks was in the carrier, of course, and she didn't make a sound. And normally she would be, crying a little because she's scared, but she didn't make a sound. And I remember putting my hand in the carrier and holding her little face, and she just looked at me. And I don't know if you could hear that. It's some guy outside. There's some guy that's always, anyway, some guy outside always singing. He's the neighbor's friend or something. I don't even know if you heard that, but yeah, riding to the vet hospital, and they were actually getting ready to close, but they said, no, we'll wait for you. And so it was like 10:30ish at night, and we got there, and they took Socks to the back, and they're like, okay, we'll come back, to get the both of you. And so And so, um, they called us in the room, and I think this Dr. Cantrilli, because Dr. Cavallaro wasn't scheduled, she was off that day, and so Dr. Cantrilli was there, and that's the first time. I mean, I've seen her, but never did she see Socks and Chloe. But anyway, she comes in the room, and she tells us, she says, Socks is not doing well. She said, just from last week, from when she was there, she said she's already lost a pound. I'm like, how did she lose a pound? I mean, today was the only day she didn't eat. So she went from 8 pounds to 7 pounds. And she said she's not doing well. And of course, I was just crying. And, my sister was holding up. But, she said to us, she says, we can run more tests if you want. She says, but, the fluid, sometimes within 24 hours it'll come back. And again, I don't even know if the fluid came back because she wasn't having issue breathing, but Socks just had this, as I keep saying, this daze in her eyes where she was already gone. And here I was again in the vet's office with my cat. And this was the last thing that I wanted to have to do again. This is why I didn't want pet. Because I didn't want to go through this. I still prayed every day, Lord, please take her in her sleep. Just let me be with her. That's all I ask. But she said to us, she was like amazed that Socks was 16, and she's like, geez, if I was a pet, I'd want to live with you all. And she says, you've given her such a long, beautiful life, and even her condition for as long as she had it. She says, you're doing the best thing for her. She says, if it was my cat, I would do the same thing. And she did explain the procedure. You give them one injection, which kind of puts them to sleep, and then the other injection, it puts them to sleep right away, and the other injection stops their heart. So she brought Socks back in, and I didn't want to be there so long to prolong it, because the longer I would be holding her, the harder and harder it would get. And my sister said, I see what you mean about the look in her eyes. She's still standing and still looking around. But she's still alive. How can I say goodbye? How is this right? So I just hugged her and I kissed her and told her how much I love her. And then I'm sorry. And my sister, hugged her and everything. And after a few minutes, she came back in and said, okay, I'm ready. And she gave her the first injection, and it actually stung because she flinched and she hissed a little bit, and it kind of knocked the little catheter. But and Dr. Julie was a little surprised. That doesn't normally happen, but it was like a few seconds later. She just went to sleep. And then she gave her the second. And my Sockie was gone. My Sockie was gone. She made sure to get her stethoscope and check, and she said, okay, her heart has stopped. And my Sockie was gone. November 6th, 2024. At around 10:45-ish or something. My 16-year-old sweet Sockie was gone. And it's 3 months and 2 days since she's gone, and I miss her more than I can explain. Chloe misses her, and even the first week, I started to worry about Chloe because she wasn't eating, and she would no longer drink the water in my room in the bowl. She wouldn't eat. To this day, she doesn't want to eat dry food anymore. I mean, she's better, but and for the first couple of weeks, she wouldn't sleep in the room, so I would sleep downstairs with Chloe, and now it's better where she does come in the room. She sleeps in here with me, but I still know that sometimes she comes up here and she's looking for her big sister. And honestly, I feel like I'm missing a sock. And I know socks come in a pair of 1 and 2, but Socks and Chloe and I were a pair of socks. And wow. Sometimes I don't know what to do. Because it's supposed to be 3 of us, not 2. And some people are okay after a month. Some people longer. I remember when Alex, I had to say goodbye to him. That was one of the most devastating things I had to go through, and I couldn't sleep in my room for months. I didn't want to see anything with animals because it would tear my heart apart. It took me a very long time to get past my grief with him, and I'm not going to sit here and say I'm okay. Because I miss her. I miss her so much. And I know that, yeah, it's a little easier now than the first day, the second day, the first month, the second month. But it doesn't change the fact that my heart still hurts. And that I miss her terribly. And now Chloe and I have to figure out a way to not feel discombobulated. And I think I made this video way too long because I should have just really made it about missing her. But I guess I just wanted to give the reason why I'm missing her and what caused missing her. I think maybe, God forbid, no, never mind. I'm not even gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say that. But you know what? Maybe no one will stick around to hear the whole story, which I don't blame you because this is a long story. But I am missing My Sockie a whole lot. Every day, I miss her. I miss that little face. I miss that sweet, gentle soul that stood at my door. She would call me and I would come upstairs and she would stand there. It's almost like she's peeking, like, are you coming, Titi Mommy? And I would come, and then she would turn around and run and jump on the bed and wait for me to come on the bed. And then if I lay down, she'd climb right on me and lay on my chest. And like I said, there were times she would just hug me. She'd put her paw on my neck and she'd just look up at me with such love. And all I wanted to do was hold her and protect her and not leave her. And she's left us. Sometimes I blame myself. Actually, not sometimes, I do blame myself. Like, did I do the right thing at the right time? I didn't want her to suffer. But this is why, after Chloe, and I love my Chloe with everything in my heart too, and I'm gonna go downstairs and see how she's doing, because she's another, like I said, she's another video. And she's 15, and God willing, she will be 16 May 15th. Yeah. But yeah, so 3 months and 2 days, I am missing my Sockie. Chloe's missing her big sister very, very much, and we'll never find such love apart from Christ. And again, I'm not saying, please don't hear what I'm not saying. There's such a pureness of love from our pets that touches your heart in a way that another love can't. And Socks will never, ever come out of my heart, just like my Alex. He will never, ever be removed from my heart or my mind. They will live on forever in my heart. And even in a book that I've written, I made it into a children's book, and right now it's in the illustration process, and it's called Missing My Socks. And I did a play on her name, Socks, because sometimes when we're gonna put on our sneakers or shoes, we're looking for a pair of socks, and sometimes we're missing the other pair to the sock. And it could be a bit annoying, and then sometimes you're looking and you think you found it and it's still the wrong pair. So I played on her name to start the book off that way, about missing your sock. But then it'll go into the reason why I'm missing my socks and why it has me so blue. And so, yeah, it's an illustration process, and God willing, it'll be completed in a couple of months, and it'll be on Amazon for sale. But I'd rather have my Sockie than having to have written a book about missing her. Love your pets with all your heart. And know that it's okay to love them like your family, because they are. They are God's creation, and He entrusted them into our care. And even Scripture talks about a man taking care of their animal. I forgot. I put it in the book too. Um, and don't let anyone tell you that they're just a cat or they're just a dog. They're your family, and you love them, and they love you. And when they're gone, it hurts. Like, I don't know what. But no, it's okay to love them. It's okay to grieve when they're gone. It's okay to miss them. And I know maybe I need to say this to myself, but don't stay in your grief. Know that you can turn to the Lord and cry out to Him and ask for Him to bring healing to your heart. I will always miss my Sockie. And I am grateful to the Lord for extending her life for over 2 years. With her cardiomyopathy, she defied the odds and then some. My little timid Sockie was strong and brave and a beautiful little soul. So, thank you for anybody who listened. And until next time, take care, everybody.